All right, so this is the input maintenance class. My name is Chris Peterson. I work here at the MLS. We're going to look at entering and maintaining listings into the MLS system. We'll just real quick to talk about the handouts that were there. You've got a handout about InstaNet and Form Simplicity and how those can be used to enter listing data. We'll look at that here in a minute. Then you've got a handout, a thicker handout that starts with the listing input security application. Fill that out, sign it, have your broker sign it, and then your input ability will be turned on. If you ever change brokerages, you don't need to take the class again, but you do need to have that form filled out and signed by the new broker. And you can find a copy of that form on our member website. If you go to imlsmembers.com and you go to the resources page, there's the link here for the listing input security application. And it's an electronic version of the document, so if you want to fill it out electronically, sign it electronically, that's totally fine. My email address is at the bottom, so you fill it out, have your broker sign it, return it to the MLS, and then we can get your input ability turned on. After that application, you'll see a section that talks about adding a listing, starting with Paragon Connect. And Paragon Connect's what we're going to talk about because that's where everything is going, is Paragon Connect. Anything new is in Paragon Connect, and so we're going to talk about that. After the sections with all the screenshots, which is labeled on your handout as page 13, it says residential data input form instructions. So that goes through the required fields of a residential listing, which is what we're going to talk about this morning or this afternoon, because residential is by far the most common listing that's entered. After the residential data instructions, the last few pages here, the second to last page, you'll see it says the Seller's Choice Quick Reference Guide. And this just basically goes through statuses in the MLS and what's available, how long you have to enter them, is public marketing allowed. And we'll talk about these statuses as we go through this afternoon. And then the last page is the MLS status disclosure form that's used in a scenario where you have like an office exclusive or a coming soon or a delayed public site listing. You have to have that. That's also available in InstaNet and Form Simplicity. And it's also here on our member site on that same section where the input security form is. Here is the status disclosure form. So we'll talk about that a little bit this afternoon as well. And then if you have a handout that just talks about inputting and maintaining in Paragon Connect and things that are different about it. If you were to go enter and maintain a listing in Paragon Classic, you'll notice right here it says, if I can get the menu to stay, there we go, explore new listing, new maintenance. So it's trying to encourage people to go to Paragon Connect, and eventually Paragon Classic is going to go away, and Paragon Connect is what we're going to have. And so doing things in Paragon Connect is not a bad thing. So that's what we're going to talk about this afternoon. Before we jump in and start talking about entering and maintaining and how InstaNet and Form Simplicity fit into all this, do you guys have any questions you want to make sure that we talk about this afternoon? As we go through this, if you have questions, definitely ask them. So the handout you've got about InstaNet and Form Simplicity starts with InstaNet, so we'll look at that first. So specifically, we're still in Transaction Desk. We're not in Transact. So if you find yourself in Transact, you just have to go to the menu here on the top, go back to Transaction Desk. Eventually, everything will be linked with the MLS and Transact, and then you'll be able to do all this in Transact. But Transaction Desk is still around, so we're still using that. So what you can do with InstaNet and Form Simplicity and the MLS is there's really two things. First, you can fill out a data form in either of the forms programs and then send that into the MLS to create a partial listing or an unpublished listing. So it's not live, no one can view it but you and your broker, anything can be changed on it, but that way you don't have to enter things twice. You're not having to fill it out in the data form and then separately go re-enter it in the MLS. The other thing that you can do is if you're entering a listing that's been entered before, you can populate the data form with information from a previous listing. It doesn't matter whose listing it was. You can pull in the information, and it pulls in about 95% of the information. And then, of course, you would make sure it's correct and fill out anything you're missing, and then you could send that to create your partial listing. So you don't have to fill out all the data if it's property that's been listed before. And especially with residential listings, our sold data goes back 20 years. Expired and canceled data goes back 19 years. So with the exception of new construction, there's a high probability the property you're listing has been listed before. And so you can at least get a good jump on entering that information. And so, like I said, we're going to look at InstaNet first. Now, a couple of things about entering the information on the data form and sending it to the MLS is there are a few required fields, not nearly as many as are in the MLS. And so if you're missing things on the data form, it will still accept it as a partial listing. To save it as a live listing, you're going to have all the required fields. The other thing is that when you're going to create that data form to send to the MLS, it can't be part of a transaction that already has an MLS number. It's a horrible analogy, but it's the best one I can think of. If you're already born, you can't give birth to yourself. So if there's already an MLS number assigned to a data form, it can't be used to then create a new MLS number. So in Transaction Desk, that's really easy because you can create a data form that is not in a transaction. In Form Simplicity, that's more complicated. We'll talk about that more in a minute. So here I am in Transaction Desk. I'm just going to go over here to the forms. And here's the IMLS data forms. I'm going to the residential data form. I'm going to create a new one, and I'm just going to do a standalone form. Now, once you send the data to the MLS to create the partial listing or the unpublished listing, then you can move it into a transaction. And it's not a synchronization, it's a one-time push. So if you create a data form, then send it to create the partial listing, and then you change the form and create the partial listing again, it's literally creating a new partial listing. It's not updating the one you did before. So it's not a synchronization, it's just a one-time push, and however many times you hit upload listing, it's creating a partial listing for that. So here's the data form. Now if I wanted to populate this from a previous listing, under File, and this is where the screenshot on your handout comes from, you go here to the Listing Partial ID, and then you put in the MLS number. So I did a search earlier, and so let's go find a listing here to use. We'll use this listing on Gisborne. There's the MLS number. So I'm going to come here and paste that in there, and it's going to import like 95% of the information. But again, you can't blame the other agent if your listing's wrong. It's on you. But it's a lot easier to verify information than it is to go and enter the entire thing. Now, earlier in the month, area was removed, so you'll notice area is not here. But subdivision, type, listing date, and expiration date are required. You'll notice the type and subdivision automatically came in. The sign-in sheet and the handouts are right there as you came in. And if I scroll down, the dates are not there, and so if I click on Upload Listing, it's telling me I need those dates. Now, the dates, if your seller hasn't committed to when they want to have it listed, they don't have to be the real dates. They can be placeholder dates. And then before you save it as a live listing, you put the real dates in there. So let's say, for example, I put today as the listing date, tomorrow is the expiration date, which of course would never be real. But now that I have those dates there, when I hit Upload Listing, it's going to come up and give me the unpublished or partial listing number that was created. And then in Paragon Connect, if I come here to Listings and I go to my unpublished, again, go to my unpublished, and there's Gisborne right there. And if I go here to edit, everything that was on that data form has been imported into the MLS. So I don't have to re-enter any of that data. It's already here. And so that's how that would work with Paragon, Connect, and Instanet. Now, Form Simplicity, you can do the same thing. But the big thing with Form Simplicity, and if you use Form Simplicity, you know this, you can't create a form on its own. They all have to be in transactions. But it can't be in a transaction that has an MLS number. And so if I come here to Blank Forms, and I choose the MLS residential data form, to be able to import information, there's a little cloud icon up in the toolbar. And if I click on that cloud with the arrow pointing down, import listing data Paragon, if you listen, I'm clicking and nothing's happening. That's because I haven't saved this in a transaction yet. So I'm going to save it. Now I have a transaction that does not have an MLS number that's called input form. You can have anything you want, but that transaction can't have an MLS number already. Can't have one. So now when I hit Save and Submit Form, and if you want to think of it as a transaction or a folder, it's the same thing. You just have to have a place to save it. So now that I have that transaction, you'll notice my toolbar looks a little different. And when I click here on Import Listing Data and click on it, instead of not working, it comes up and gives me a place to put the MLS number in. And so if I go here to my search, let's just use the next one from the search results on Woodhouse. I'll paste that in there, and just like before, it's going to import like 95% of that information. So everything from that previous listing will be imported in here. Type and subdivision are required, as well as the listing date and expiration date. So I'll need to put those dates in there before I can send it to the MLS to create a partial listing. So we'll come here to the dates. Again, I can put today as the listing date, tomorrow is the expiration date, because as long as they're correct before I save it as a listing in the MLS, it's good. Yeah?
What do you usually put for their expiration date?
It's going to be the expiration date on the seller rep agreement. Whenever your contract expires, yeah. I mean, the date of the expiration date is the contract with your seller.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's that
what I
date.
figured.
Yep. And then to send it to the MLS, I'm going to click here on Save and Submit to MLS. And then just like before, it's going to upload it. It's going to give me the MLS number, partial MLS number here. And so if I go back here to Paragon Connect, go to Listings, go to the Unpublished, there's that listing on Woodhouse, and if I go to Edit, everything that was in that data form is now here. So that's how InstaNet and Form Simplicity kind of fit into this. I will tell you, if I was entering a listing, that's how I would do it. Because if you've got to fill out the data form, why do I need to fill things out twice? So you fill the data form out, and you either click on the Save and Submit in Form Simplicity, or click on Upload Listing in InstaNet, and that uploads that information into the MLS, and then of course you can edit the things you need to edit. So now we're going to pretend those don't exist, and we're going to talk about how you would enter it directly into the MLS. So in Paragon Connect here, if I go here to the menu on the left and I go to Listings, there's this plus right down here on the bottom right to add a listing. When you go to add a listing, there's two ways to do it. We'll talk about tax autofill in a minute, but if I go here to Manual, then I would choose the property class my listing fits into. So before we talk about residential, we want to talk about office exclusives. So office exclusives don't happen that often. The last time I checked, there were less than 10 in the entire MLS with 8,000 plus members of the MLS. But if you're going to have an office exclusive, that would be a situation where the seller wants you to represent them, but they don't want the property marketed. So it could be that the seller's well known, the property's well known, they have a buyer in mind, but they don't want it marketed out there for people to see it. So you're putting it into the MLS for accountability. And so to enter an office exclusive in the MLS, you would come here and choose Office Exclusives and hit Create. And it has a lot less required fields. It has 11 required fields to make an office exclusive. So you would enter the information here. With the office exclusive, you also have to have that status disclosure form, which is the last page in your handout. It's also in InstaNet and Form Simplicity. And so you would come here, choose office exclusive, and then the seller, agent, and broker all sign it, and then it's uploaded to your office exclusive listing. The big restriction with office exclusives is you can't have any public marketing. No signs, no social media, basically no talking about it outside your office. So that's, if anything outside of your office is public marketing. And so that's why there aren't a lot of those, because if you're in sales, it's hard to sell something you can't talk about. And so that's, but the seller needs to have a way to say, hey, represent me, but don't talk about it. That's what this is for. It's the exception to every listing is available to everybody. And so if you have an office exclusive, you'd upload this, and then of course you'd fill the information in here for your office exclusive, and then when you come here to save it, you'd save it, hit publish, and it would become an office exclusive, visible to only people within your brokerage. No one else could search for it. Office exclusives automatically expire after 30 days. So if you end up having to have it last longer than that, you either have to copy it or re-enter it. I mean, it's only got 11 required fields. It's not hard. When you get an offer, you don't mark it as pending. You just wait till it closes and then re-enter it as an unpublished sold listing with all the required fields at that time. So that way you're able to get it in for comparable purposes, for production purposes, but it's being entered in after the fact. And so that's how it would work with an office exclusive. The other time that this form is used is for delayed entry or coming soon listings, which are kind of similar. So both of these listings are situations where the seller wants a slow beginning. So coming soon listings, in both these cases, they're entered the next business day after you begin marketing. You can market both of them. With a coming soon listing, you enter it the next business day after marketing with the status of coming soon. It also requires the status disclosure form, when the seller, agent, and broker all sign it, and then you upload it. Coming soon listings, keep that status for 14 days. You can make it new before 14 days. It can't last longer than that. During that coming soon time period, you can't have any showings or open houses for that property, and that coming soon listing is syndicated to the internet sites. So it'll be on Zillow and Realtor.com and Redfin and all those sites. It can't have showings and open houses, and days on market do not accrue. That's a coming soon. Delayed entry would be,
Can you have a sign in the yard?
oh yeah, you can do this, you can all the marketing you want. Yep, there's no marketing restrictions. Delayed entry, just like a coming soon, you enter it in the MLS the next business day after marketing. You can have signs in the yard, you can talk about it. You upload the status disclosure form signed by everybody. Delayed entry listings stay that way for 14 days. During that time period that they have that status, showings and open houses can happen, and days on market do accrue, where coming soons they don't accrue. Delayed entry or delayed public site listings do not go to the portal sites. They're not going to be online for consumers to see. So you can have showings and open houses, but it won't be on the internet for consumers to find on their own. You can't have showings and open houses for coming soons, but it will be on the internet. Now, if you don't want your coming soon to go to the internet, you can turn off the internet fields to not have it go there, and then later on you can change it and have it go there. But by default, coming soon listings do go, and delayed entry or delayed public sites don't go. So that's that status disclosure form. Questions about the coming soons or delayed entry? The delayed public sites, delayed entry do not happen very often. I've still yet to see one in the MLS. Coming soons happen a little more often. But really what both of these are for is to allow the seller, I guess, lead time before they're ready. I mean, that's kind of what it is. So if the seller doesn't have any situation like that, you wouldn't enter it either of these ways. You'd enter it as new. And so let's go back here to the listing screen, and we're just going to walk through entering a listing. Now, if you look at the screenshots, this walks through this whole same process. And then when we get to the required fields, we'll start talking about the information that's on page 13. The thing with listings is there's not a way to practice listings. There's not a way to practice entering a listing. So big thing to remember is until you save it, nothing's live. So you can partially save it as an unpublished listing, nothing's live. And then when you go to save it live, it won't let you save it if you're missing things. It won't let you save it if things are missing or they're entered incorrectly. It'll stop you from being able to save it. So to enter a listing that's not a coming soon or an office exclusive or a status or a office exclusive, come here, and if I want to choose, if I want to do the tax autofill, I can go here to tax autofill, and then you choose the county you want to pull tax data from. So let's say it's Idaho, and since we're in Ada County, we'll do Ada County, and then you put in the information to find the tax record. So let's say I've got an address, and the street is Pine Flats. So now when I hit search, there's only one address, 2872 Pine Flats in Ada County, and there it is. So when I hit autofill, it will populate a little bit of information, not a lot. So here you choose your property class. So I'm going to pick residential. Now, if your property fits into more than one property class, you can enter it more than once at the same time. So if I've got a property that's a farm, but it's an area where development's happening, I could then enter it as farm and ranch, business, commercial, and vacant land all at the same time. You're physically entering it 3 times because they have different required fields, and every version of the listing needs to be entered the next business day after marketing. And then once you have it in the MLS, if you get an offer, you can mark all 3 of them as pending, but when it closes, you only mark one of them as sold and cancel the others because it didn't sell 3 times, it sold once. But that allows you to get it in front of as many agents and consumers that you need to. So for our example this morning, this afternoon, I'm just going to pick, residential, and hit create. And then it's going to populate a little bit of information. It does not populate a lot. And we'll look at it here, what it populates here in a second. The reason for that is Idaho has 44 counties, and there's 44 ways to format the data. There isn't a policy from the state that says every county has to format information this way. And so because of that, it's all different. And so depending on the county, you may see more or less than other counties. So what we have here right now, we've got the address, so 2872 South Pine Flats Way, city, state, zip code, the number of acres, the year built, the master bedroom level, the the tax year, and I think the owner's name is the other thing we've got. Oh, we don't even have the owner's name in here. So that's it. That's all it populated. So the tax autofill isn't really as useful as you'd want it to be, but like we talked about earlier, if you're using the data form and you've already filled all that information in, it's already going to be here when you go to save your listing. So before we jump in and talk about entering the data here, let's talk about kind of how the screen is set up. Up on the top left, you've got the MLS number and address. Right now it's unpublished and it's got a temporary listing number. Once it's a live listing, you'd see that information there. Over on the right, you've got search. That lets you search for a field. So maybe I'm trying to enter in occupied by, so I type in OCC, and there's occupied by. So if you're looking for a field, that's an easy way to find a field. Then you've got filter, and filter lets you choose from all the fields required only, blank only, populated only. So if you're just trying to look at what you're doing, what you've got done, you can do that easily. Here goes the next icon, lets you edit your photos. You can also edit your photos from here, which we'll talk about photos more in a minute. You can add documents to your listing, add floor plans, and then under more, you can validate the location, which it will make you do before you save it live anyway. Price analysis we'll talk more about with maintaining listings, but it just basically lets you go in and see when it's a live listing, how many contacts with saved searches match that property. And then you can, maybe you're trying to help your seller understand what a competitive price would be. You can enter an open house or a tour, and then if you don't want to have the little help tips, you can turn those off. All right, so we want to talk about the required fields that are here. The required fields have the little asterisk here, and like I said, they're not going to let you save it without them. So if this is where the information on page 13 comes into play. So again, to get here, I picked residential. The first thing I've got to enter in is my status. And you can come here and start typing in if you want, or you can click on the little drop-down arrow, and that will drop down the list. So we already talked about coming soon, and we talked about the delayed public sites. Typically when any of these listings are entered, they're entered as new or back on market. The difference between those is that new means it's at a new office, or it's been 30 days or longer and it's being listed at the same brokerage where it was before. Back on market would mean it's being relisted at the same brokerage and it's been less than 30 days. Both of those change to active after 3 days, so you want to make sure you enter it correctly, because by the time we're notified, it's probably active and you could possibly get a $100 fine for inaccurate data. Fines are for data accuracy, so if your information is correct, typically you're not going to get a fine. The only other times fines come into play is when people don't do things at the correct time period, which the time period for entering, maintaining, marking sold, everything is the next business day. That's how much time you have. So if you put a sign out in the yard on Monday, then by the end of Tuesday, it needs to be in the MLS. And it's not 5 p.m., it's the end of Tuesday, which essentially means 11:59 p.m. Tuesday night. So when we go to look at the history of the listing, that's when it was entered. And so the time period is the next business day. The contingent statuses mean you have an offer, but you're looking for backup offers. Per the Real Estate Commission, if you have a contingent offer, that means you also have the seller's right to continue to market signed by both parties. And the MLS requires, if you have a contingent status, that you have the terms of the contingency or the bump clause in the agent remarks, so other agents know how long it's going to take for their offer to become the primary offer. There isn't a recommended time period. It can be 24, 72 hours, whatever you want it to be, but you have to have that bump clause in there. Contingent listings are still active and they'll still expire. No price new construction is pretty self-explanatory. It's new construction with no price. Sold is a listing that was in the MLS, went pending and sold. Unpublished sold, we talked about earlier with office exclusives. That's a listing that wasn't marketed in the MLS, but is being entered after the fact for comps or production purposes. And all the required fields have to go in. Pending lease purchase, you have an offer, you're not looking for other offers. Leased, rented, that's pretty easy. Now there's one other status that's at the top of page 14 that's not on here because you wouldn't enter a listing that way. I should say, bottom of page 14, top of page 15. And that status is temporarily off market. You wouldn't enter a listing as temporarily off market. It has to be on the market to go off the market. But a temporarily off market listing, you have to identify in the agent remarks when it's coming back or why it's not coming back, because it will still expire. During the temporary off market status, you can't have any showings or open houses. And if you allow showings or open houses, there's a fine of up to $500 for both sides. And during the temporary off-market status, it won't be syndicated to the internet, and it still accumulates days on market. So there's not a marketing advantage for temporarily off-market. A listing the week of Thanksgiving is a great example of temporarily off-market. If you have a listing in November and your seller's got everybody coming over for Thanksgiving, they probably don't want to deal with showings the week of Thanksgiving, so instead of canceling the listing, you use temporarily off-market. Your sign can still be in the yard, your lockbox can still be on the door, and then in the agent remarks, you write no showings till December 1st. That will keep your seller from having their listing found on the internet by consumers. Agents won't find it in active property searches, and they won't be bothered the week of Thanksgiving. So that's how temporarily off-market works. For our example, we're going to pick new here. And then earlier we talked about if it fits into more than one property class, it can be entered more than once. But I'm already in residential, so I've got to choose what type best fits this property. And so you have the different type choices here, and types at the bottom of page 15, top of page 16. Single family and single family with acreage are the most common types that are used, and they have a shared part of a definition. In your handout, it's in bold. It says a stick site manufactured modular built home on foundation. So basically, it's a home on a permanent foundation. That is single family or single family with acreage. In the features, one of the required feature fields is construction. That's where you'd identify if it's frame construction, a manufactured home, mobile home, or whatever it is. And then the difference between those two is land size. Single family is less than 1 acre. Single family with acreage is 1 acre or more. And Paragon has programming on the back end that if the number of acres is less than 1, it won't accept single family with acreage. So it doesn't matter how excited your seller is that has 0.85 acres. They don't have an acre, so they don't have single family with acreage. And it works both ways. We had a situation a couple years ago where in a subdivision, almost all the homes had almost an acre, and one property had 1.03 acres. And the listing agent wanted to put it as single family like the rest of the homes. You can't, because you have 1 acre or more, so it's single family with acreage. I don't make math. Go talk to Pythagoras. Go with Bill and Ted back in time to the Greeks and take care of it. But that's how it works. Just like if you're in Ada County, but you like Canyon County, if you're on the east side of McDermott, you're not in Canyon County, you're in Ada County. So you want to make sure it's the correct property. Like I said, Paragon won't let you put it in wrong anyway. Timeshare is going to be fractional ownership. A townhouse is going to have lot ownership and have a lot and block in the legal description, where a condo won't have lot ownership and have a unit number in the legal description. Mobile manufactured, owned lot, rented lot, these are ones that are not on foundations. Recreational land with home is the vaguest of all of these. It just means the land the home is on has recreational value. So maybe it borders Forest Service land or BLM land. It's on the river, it's on the lake. The trick is it can't be more than one of these. So you want to pick the one that best describes the property for your seller. A lot of times people have said, well, what about a house in McCall? Would that be recreational land with home? Well, if a family with kids moved there, would the parents go to work and the kids go to school? Because that sounds like single family. That sounds like single family to me. I mean, you just have to pick whichever best fits it. It can't be both. And what I will tell you is single family is what people search for. Even houses that might look like a cabin, if it's accessible year round, they're probably looking at that as single family. So we'll pick single family here. Then we have price. Price, of course, is a required field. I'll just put $1,000 there. Then we get to county, and come here and select your county. Here's Ada County. Now, you might be wondering, why does it say Ada County? That's because Meridian is already in there as my city. City and counties are linked. So when you put a city in there, it's going to have the counties that apply to it. Then we get to subdivision, and there are over 6,000 subdivisions on this list. If it's not in a subdivision, we have 0 not applicable. And then you can search here for the subdivision that you're looking for. If it's not on our list, you can send a request via email to support@intermountainmls.com, and they can add the subdivision. They'll make sure it's not there. A couple of things about subdivisions is, number one, sometimes there's a different marketed name than legal name. We want the marketed name. So, for example, there's a subdivision in Meridian, I think it's off Locust Grove, called, let me think of it, hold on. It is Woodbridge. There we go, Woodbridge. The legal description for Woodbridge is snorting bull. So if you pull a title report or tax information on a house in Woodbridge, it will say snorting bull. We have Woodbridge in the MLS because that's what the big sign says out front. That's what consumers know it as. In Nampa, there's a subdivision called South Fork Ranch. Dallas, South Fork Ranch. But the legal description is Midland Park. So when you go to ask for a subdivision to be added, you want to make sure you're giving us the marketed name. That doesn't happen a ton. We don't have some, guide or rubric that says this is this and that is that, because we don't know all the subdivisions that are that way. But if you're asking for a subdivision to be added, that's an important thing to remember. Secondly is we don't put phases in here. Columbia Village is one subdivision. Imagine how complicated it would be to keep that correct. I mean, for all the times people say the MLS likes to find people, if you wanted to find people, we'd do that. We'd put all the phases in there and say, hope you get it right, and then just send out fines to everybody, which we don't do that. So that's a few things to remember about subdivisions. So I'm going to pick Thousand Springs. This one happens to be in Thousand Spring. And then there's city and state that came in automatically with the tax autofill and the zip code. So then we get to the internet fields. Now the internet fields are turned on by default, and on the data form it says, check if no, which sounds pretty obvious. Check this if you want it to be marked no. So if you need those marked no, check them on the data form or come here and turn them off. So these have to do with how your listing will be treated on the internet. So earlier when we were talking about coming soons, I mentioned they're syndicated to the internet automatically. If you don't want your coming soon syndicated to the internet, you would come here and turn that off. So that doesn't happen. And then you would just need to remember whenever it's going to be a new listing to come back here and turn it on so it does syndicate everywhere. So internet includes means, will this listing go everywhere where your broker has decided to send listings to? The MLS doesn't decide how that goes. Your broker chooses the websites they go to. So most brokers choose them all, but it's up to the broker. Internet address display means when it goes to those websites, can the address be displayed? If you turn that off, the address won't be displayed. The listing will still be there, but of course it can't be on a map because it doesn't have an address. But if somebody does search, for example, by square footage, it'll have the city, but they wouldn't have an address. Display comments means on one of those broker or agent websites where listings are syndicated to, when a consumer logs in, are they able to leave comments for the agent or broker whose website they're on? This is when people say, well, I always turn that off because I don't want people leaving bad comments about the property. They're only leaving bad or good comments for their agent, which means if someone likes your house, they can't tell their agent, I like this house. Yes, they can't tell them they don't like it either, but I don't think a lot of people will waste time saying I don't like this. They just say about the stuff they like. I mean, when you make a grocery list for the grocery store, you don't write down all the stuff you're not going to buy. You write down the stuff that you want. And so if you turn that off, it means consumers can't say they like your house. Display AVM. AVM stands for Automated Valuation Model. The most well-known AVM that's out there is the Zestimate, but every website has them now. If you turn this off, that doesn't stop the AVM for your listing. It stops the listing data from this listing being used to calculate AVMs for other properties. There's no way to turn off those AVMs. It's free speech. I mean, I could have my own AVM and call it chili can AVM, and your house is worth 3 cans of chili. Your house is worth Dinty Moore chili. I mean, anybody can do what they want. And if you read the fine print of all those AVMs, they tell you it's fiction. It's an opinion. It's not reality. If a listing is supposed to be like on Zillow and some of those sites and it's not there, a lot of times it's because this gets turned off. Because someone turned it off not understanding what it was. They are all turned on by default though. You have to turn them off if you don't want that to happen. So that's the internet fields. Then we get here to type of ownership, and there's 2 choices. There's fee simple, less than fee simple. Fee simple means there are no restrictions or exclusions. Everything's for sale. Less than fee simple means there are restrictions and exclusions. For example, in McCall around the lake, they have state land leases where you own the structure, not the ground. That's less than fee simple. Here in the valley, an example might be there's quite a few over 55 communities where they're framed stick-built homes, but you don't own the land. You pay a maintenance fee, and they do all the landscaping, and that would be less than fee simple. So you just pick whatever it is for your property. Then we have data ownership. That's not a required field. The next required one is garage capacity. And if you're wondering where we are, garage capacity is on page 17. And all we want is a whole number. How many cars fit in the garage? I had someone say, well, what about a 3.5 car garage? The better question is, what is a half car? Can you show me? Because they don't exist, and so neither do 3.5 car garages. What?
It's a smart car.
Well, that could be. I'd say that's a small car, but it's still just a car. It's not a half a car. And so if you had a 3.5 car garage, that is still a 3-car garage, and in the remarks you could write oversized 3-car garage, room for all your toys. But here you put 3. And so if there isn't a garage, then of course you put 0 because it's a required field. There are some other other garage fields here you can fill in. They're not required. But like here's RV garage dimensions, RV garage door dimensions, you can put in there if you want. The next required field is land size. And with land size, you have preset choices to select from. Land size validates against number of acres. So if the land size you pick doesn't match what the number of acres is, then it'll flag that as not being a mismatch. And I'll make sure I get an error for that. Then we have age. Age validates against year built. And so you just want to make sure again that they match. And then we get to level. Below grade is a basement. So if there's a basement, of course, you would pick below grade. And then if whatever best matches your property. I mean, split entry could include properties that have below grade square footage, but split entry better describes a property that when you open the door, there's 2 sets of stairs. And so this lets you pick the one that best describes your property. Then we have directions, and it says 4,000 characters. I wouldn't use 4,000 characters because on most of the views it doesn't have room for that, but it is required, and so they want you to put in, the directions for the property. There aren't any guidelines because the board thinks people can use common sense for lots of things, which that may be neither here nor there, but I would recommend using north, south, east, west. Don't use left and right, because if somebody's coming down Eagle Road and you say go left off Eagle Road, if they're coming from Meridian, that's going to head them west. If they're coming from Eagle, they're heading east. So you just want to make sure you're putting the best thing in there you can. Then we have the number of acres. That pulled in from the tax autofill. It's 3 characters to the right of the decimal. Year built came in also from the tax records. Then we have the lot size, length, and width. They want the frontage width, and if you mouse over these little eyes, it'll tell you. They want the frontage width and the shortest length for depth. And a couple of ways to get the lot dimensions. If it's new construction or you've got a plat map, you can get it right there. If you don't have those things, you can go here to the MLS Gateway page, go here to CRS data, and then you can search the tax records. And so if I'm in Ada County and I come here and put in 2872 South Pine Flats Way, it's going to bring up the tax information, and there's the lot dimensions. So 88 is the frontage and 112 is the shortest. So they want 112 and 88. And it's not used to calculate any kind of area or anything. It's there to give a description of the lot. If I had a 125-foot trailer, this may not be the lot for me because one of the sides is only 112. That's what it's for. Then we have irrigation district that's required. It's a yes/no field. It is a field. There's a few of them that are this way. That's a conditional field. If I mark yes, then irrigation district name will be required. People ask all the time, well, how am I supposed to know that? Well, if the seller's in an irrigation district, every year they're paying for irrigation, not to the city, but to the irrigation district. And so they would have a bill indicating that. Then we've got the school district and schools. Now, school district is linked with area and county. So if I live in Meridian, I'm either going to West Ada or Acuna. Not going to Boise, not going to Valley View, not going to Nampa. So you'd pick whatever district it is. And the schools that are going to be here are the geographically assigned ones. So magnet schools, charter schools, private schools, of course, aren't going to be here. So you would just choose whatever school it needs to be and put them in there. And as long as it's accurate when you are entering the listing, that's what matters. If they rezone the schools after it's entered, you aren't required to change it. Of course, you can if you want. The best way to get the school information is going to be from the school district website. There are a lot of websites that have school data, Great Schools, Niche, a lot of these sites, but the district site will be the most current, most correct. And people ask, well, how do you know that? Well, we're Idaho. We're not the top of anybody's list to have that information updated on a monthly basis because we're not densely populated like some other parts of the country. So the district website is the best place to get it. If you're listing a property that's outside of our geographic areas in MLS, like maybe you're listing a property in St. Anthony, we're not going to have St. Anthony schools in here. We're not their primary MLS. The Snake River MLS is. So here you would just come and put out of area for the school district and out of area for all the schools because we're not their primary MLS. We're not going to have all that in there. It's hard enough to keep it accurate for our geographic location, let alone trying to maintain the entire state. Then we get to the square footage, and it's the first of a few that are called calculated fields. And if you're wondering, this is on page 18 and page 19. So calculated fields just means that nowhere are you typing in the total square feet. It's got the different sections: above grade finished, below grade finished, above grade unfinished, and below grade unfinished. And then that total is put on the listing. but nowhere are you putting in the total. So let's say, for example, I've got 1,700 above grade finished, 1,000 below grade finished. So my listing would say 2,700 square feet, but I'm not entering 2,700 anywhere. It totals it. And then, of course, unfinished, if I don't have any, I'd put 0 here. The next field that's a required field is the detached additional dwelling total approximate square feet. And as the name indicates, this is a detached structure. So if your property has a detached structure that has occupiable, livable square feet, you would enter that in here, like a guest house or maybe a detached garage with a loft or something. The key is it has to be occupiable, it has to be livable. People ask all the time, would that be an ADU? That could be an ADU, but that's not exclusively what it could be. When I was growing up, when I was very young, my grandparents lived in Payette, and my grandpa had a field that he grew alfalfa on, and on their property there was a manufactured home on a foundation that my great-grandma lived in. It did not have a separate address. That's what this would be. Detached additional square footage that comes with the home. That square footage does get added to the total that's for sale. The benefit of this is, first, if your property has that, it's a great way to identify that. And secondly, if you're searching, you can add that detached additional square footage field to your search, put the minimum of 1 square foot, and you're going to find properties that have separate detached dwellings. So this is not something that's attached to the home. It's detached, but it has occupiable square feet, and it is included. There are some fields for the detached additional dwelling. The square footage is the only one that's required, though. Then we get the room sizes and levels. Room sizes are not required. If you want to put them in, it's just number X number, but they're not required. Bedroom levels, however, are required, but the choices are main, down, and upper. So main's the main level, down is below the main level, upper is above. So if you have a 3-story house with everything above grade, there is an upper 1 and upper 2, they're just all upper. And then the only other thing really to look at with the room levels and sizes, other than the bedroom levels being required, is you can't call one room 2 things. For example, here we have den size and den level. Here is office size and office level. Both of those could be describing a room with built-in storage. And I could go in there and fill that out trying to describe one room 2 different ways. But there's no context here. Someone else will think there's a den and an office, not a den or an office. And so you just have to decide what you're going to call it. There aren't definitions from the board about what the rooms mean. I've seen listings before where at one time they entered the room as a great room, the next time somebody entered it as the living room. You can do whatever you want, but you can't call one room 2 things. And then we get to the bedrooms and bathrooms. Like the square footage, these are calculated fields. So we have main level, upper level, and below grade for all of these. So let's say I've got 3 bedrooms on the main level, no upper level, and 2 below grade. Bathrooms, 2.5 on the main level, not 25, 2.5. No upper level, and 1 below grade. So my listing would say 5 bedroom, 3.5 bath. For the MLS, it's a full or a half bath. There are no 3/4 baths. Toilet and a sink is a half. Anything more than that is a full. I had someone say, well, what about a 1.5 bath? That doesn't exist. It's a full bath. A bath may have a sink, may have a shower and a tub, but it's still just one bath. Yeah, exactly. Yep. And same thing with if you have a property that has 2 half baths on the same level. Listen, like I mentioned before, I'm not Pythagoras. 0.5 and 0.5 is 1. So if you only have 2 half baths on one level, you have 1 bathroom. You can't. There's not another way to represent that. But you could put that in the agent remarks, because if you have 2 half baths on the same level, that makes that a great house to entertain because you have 2 half baths. All right, back here to the general section. After the included and excluded, that's the last information that's here for the general section. So next we've got the features. Now on the data form, the features are the 2nd and 3rd page. So everything you have checked here gets automatically imported into your listing. The only required fields are construction, list class, and source of square feet. And if you click here on the drop down right here, that brings up all the features, and I can scroll through them all. And if I click on that little asterisk, that only shows me the required ones. Now, this is where you put things that exist. So unlike the remarks that you can put possibilities, these are things that exist. So starting with construction. So let's say I've got frame construction with a crawl space and vinyl siding. If I had a mobile home or a manufactured home, of course, I would select those here. And then under list class, exclusive agency or exclusive right to sell, whatever your agreement is with your seller. And then source of square feet. If you pick public records, then your square footage total should match the public records because that's your source. But you'll notice there's other sources there. Agent measured, appraisal, other, building plans. And then when I hit apply, I've got those required fields and I could go on my way and finish the listing. That being said, adding other features can be really useful because people use features all the time when they're searching listings. And so again, you just want to remember these are things that exist. So for example, if I go to cooling and I choose central air, that doesn't mean I can go to Home Depot, buy an air conditioner and connect it and I have central air. That means if I went in the house today and cranked down the thermostat, the AC kicks on because it exists. Or if I go down here to included kitchen features and I choose dishwasher, that doesn't mean there's a hole in the cabinetry where I can install a dishwasher. It means there's one there. And then if we go down here to lot features, garden space is a great one to talk about because gardens have a lot of different varieties. Some gardens are ornate with fences and archways and rose bushes and hedges and everything like that, where others, they dug up the grass, they threw down some seed, and now they have corn. Both of those are garden space. It's a place that is a garden or a weed patch that used to be one. So that's what features are, things that exist. And for some reason, one that people have a hard time understanding, which I don't get, is RV parking. It is a place created for parking an RV or the place where you are parking the RV, which means it could be a cement pad, a gravel pad. It could be pavers on the side of the house. It also could be, if you have a large backyard with a gate that opens up to the road, it could be the place where you've been parking the RV in your backyard. If you have the gate that opens up to the road in a large backyard and you have not parked an RV there, though, it is not RV parking if it's just grass. RV parking has to be created for or used for that purpose, like all the other features. Now, of course, you could write in the remarks, large backyard to store all your toys, but you wouldn't mark RV parking here because it doesn't exist. That's the key with the features, is they're things that exist. And so you can come here, add the features you need. If you've got the required ones, you can come back later and add the other ones if you want, if you're in a hurry or something. Questions about the features? All right, so then we have the financial section, and if you're wondering where we are, the financial section is on page 20. That's where we are. And the financial section is a short section, but almost everything here is required, starting with HOA information, association fees, frequencies, setup and transfer fees. So if you don't have an association, you've got 0, not applicable, and 0 that you can put in here. But of course, if you have an HOA, you would put that in there. Then we have local improvement district. Yes, no. Is the property in a local improvement district? That would be a temporary taxing district for upgrades to that location. Like maybe if a subdivision was annexed into the city to pay for infrastructure costs and building sidewalks, they might put that neighborhood in a local improvement district for 5 years to pay for that infrastructure. The key with a local improvement district is it's temporary. It's going to end. And so if your property was in one and you marked yes, that helps a buyer understand that if I buy this property, my taxes will change in a certain amount of time. So if this is the house I like, maybe it's better that I pay higher taxes instead of my second choice that's a mile away. Same thing with homeowner's exemption. That doesn't mean does it qualify for an exemption, because in Idaho we're easy. If it's your primary residence, it qualifies. What this means is do the taxes reflect an exemption? And so if I go back here to the CRS data tax information, I can scroll down here to the tax assessment, exempt reason, homestead. So this one has the homeowner's exemption. So I would mark that as yes. If a property was marked as no because it's not owner occupied, that also helps a seller understand if you owner occupy this property, the taxes will be lower. Then we have flood insurance required, yes, no, or unknown. Typically it's only required if you have a mortgage. So if you don't have a mortgage, it may not be required. Your buyer would want to know that. And then we get to the taxes and tax year. The tax year automatically came in from the tax information. The tax year did not. And so I can come here and see the taxes did not. The tax year did. For this property, 2025 is the most recent tax year, And they don't need the cents, so the property is $17.86 for the taxes. So I'd come here and put in $17.86. Then we have the legal description. I can also get that from the CRS data tax information. For residential listings, it's pretty simple. It's going to be lot, block, name of the subdivision. If the legal description is larger than the 255 characters that are here, you can always upload a document and then just give the name of the document here that you uploaded that has that legal description. Then we have the parcel number, which did come in from CRS data. If I go here to CRS data, go back up to the top, there's the parcel number. Now, depending on the county, parcel numbers are different. Some counties have zeros and have spaces in them. Ada County typically starts with an R, but it just depends on the county. Then we've got the distressed property fields: short sale, bank owned, foreclosure, auction, HUD owned, and they're just yes, no fields. So you just mark in here what you need. Again, if you'd marked it on the data form, they'd be here already. And with a few exceptions, anything can be changed when you have your listing in the MLS. So maybe it doesn't start out as a short sale, but later on it is. You could come here and edit that information if you wanted to do that. The fields that aren't editable after a listing's live is listing date and being able to enter it as mark it as new or back on market. If you marked it as back on market, you can't change it to new, and vice versa. So if you entered it incorrectly, notify support and we can fix it for you. So that is the financial section. So then we get to the remarks and agent remarks. Now, first off, before we start about entering it, we want to talk about what's allowed. This is on the top of page 21. So it talks about the remarks. You've got 1,400 characters. And in bold, it says, only information pertinent to the physical characteristics of the property listed will be permitted to be displayed in the public remarks field of the MLS. So it's got to be pertinent to the physical characteristics of the property to be entered in the remarks. And in the public remarks, you can't have any agent, brokerage information at all in there. The agent remarks, because it's only seen by agents, is a lot more flexible. You can have all your contact information, brokerage information in there. The one thing the agent remarks restricts is unrelated third-party marketing. So I can't put in the agent remarks, I love Pioneer Title. I can't put that in there. But I could put seller prefers Pioneer Title because I'm showing a connection to the transaction. Now in Paragon Connect, it can auto-generate your remarks. To do that, it requires some things. If I hit auto-generate here, it'll tell me I have to have at least 3 photos, the address, city, and state. So I don't have any photos yet. So I'm going to come here to the edit photo, and I'm going to upload some photos. So I'm going to come here, click on the plus, and then it's going to come up and give me a place to upload photos. And there's my photos for training. So here's some photos, and I'm just going to select some here. We'll select these. I don't need to front picture twice. So now I open those up, and it loads the pictures for me. So a couple of things happen when you load the photos. First, it will upload the photos, and then it will add labels and descriptions to those photos. If you want to edit the labels and descriptions, you can do that. The labels and descriptions are used for obviously describing the photos, but there are a lot of people that use screen readers that are on the internet. This allows people to be able to read what the image is. So here it's got descriptions in there, and these are just basic descriptions, nothing exciting. There is a description on this one because it's got more things going on. And then if I'm happy with this, I can hit save. If I want to change the label, I can manually do that, or I can come here and change the description. And then if I want to change the order of the pictures, up here on the top right, I can click reorder, because maybe I want to have picture C be the primary photo because it's the front of the house. So now when I hit save, it's going to put them in that order. And then I just click on the X, and I've got my photos in there. And again, the reason we uploaded the photos was because we need them to do the auto generation of their public remarks. Now you might think, why would I do that, Chris? Because 1,400 characters can be hard to come up with sometimes. And sometimes you're putting lipstick on a pig, and it's really hard to think of things to write. So you can come here, and you can choose the style. So we'll do playful just for fun. I don't think most people use playful. But I hit auto generate, and then it generates the public remarks. And of course, you don't have to use what's there, but it's a great starting point. Just like importing the data from a previous listing, it's a lot easier to update the information. I mean, ready for a home that's as fun as you are? I mean, that may not be what you want to put in the public remarks. If I go here, though, to the standard, Now I've got information about that property. And it doesn't take all 1,400 characters. There's still 586 characters that are remaining. So I could come here and edit it if I need to. And so that's the
You have to upload the photos first before you can do it.
right. And if you don't have the photos when you go to do it, like I did, when you hit auto generate, it'll tell you have to have at least 3 photos. So, and you could put all 50 photos in if you wanted, but you just have to have at least 3. So that's the generating of the remarks. And of course, agent remarks don't auto generate. It's only seen by agents. So then we get here to the agent section, the last section when you're entering it. When you enter a listing, you are the listing agent. There's not a way to enter it as co-agent. If you have the ability to maintain listings and you're a co-agent, once the listing's live, you can maintain it just like the listing agent can. The only thing that the primary agent can do over the co-agent is enter it. So if you enter it and you're supposed to be the co-agent and now you're the primary agent, it's really easy for someone at your brokerage that has broker level access to switch who the agent is. We can do it at the MLS too, but we need documentation. For us to change things, we need documentation. And so you would need to send us something showing who agent number 1 is and who agent number 2 is, where someone at your brokerage can just easily fix it. Then we've got where you'd add a co-agent. You just come here and start typing in their name. And then select that person, and now you got a co-agent in there. Then we get to selling agent to present yes, no. This is the middle part of page 21, or bottom middle. It says selling agent to present offers directly to sellers. This means that the agent representing the buyer, the selling agent, are they going to bring the offer directly to the sellers? IREC requires that as the listing agent, this is one of the minimum levels of service you provide, is you field the offer. So if your listing's in Idaho and you're an agent in Idaho, you're going to always mark this as no. But we have agents in Eastern Oregon and Eastern Washington who have different requirements, and so that's why it's a yes-no field. Then we have listing service. What level of service is your brokerage providing? And so full service means you're providing all services to the seller. Limited service means you're not doing everything. Maybe you're presenting the offer, but the seller's negotiating it themselves, or they're negotiating with their attorney. Basically, if you're not full service, you're limited service. And this would be something you would know from the beginning with your seller. It's in your agreement with them. MLS entry only is the least level of service. It means all the listing brokerage is doing are the requirements by the state and then putting it in the MLS. And so this just allows for different business models for brokerages. Some brokerages, instead of having compensation based on a percentage of the sold price, have a fee-based structure. For X amount of dollars, they put it in the MLS. For X amount more, they have an open house. This just allows for that kind of variance in service level. And so when you're entering the listing, you just pick whatever service you're providing. Most brokerages are full service. But that way, agents that are bringing a buyer understand what's going on. Owner and tenant information is not required. Of course, if the owner is helping set up showings, it might be important to have their name here. When a listing goes sold, canceled, or expired, we automatically remove the owner and tenant information. We don't retain that in the listing. So then we get down here to the dates. Listing date and expiration date are required. Only the listing agent can see the expiration date and their broker. No one else can see it, but every listing has one. The listing date would be the date your marketing starts. So if I had a listing that the seller signed off with me on the 1st, but we're not going to start marketing it till the 18th, that would be my listing date. And you can't enter listings early. I can't enter a listing on the 17th and have it go live on the 18th. I have to save it as a live listing on the 18th. I had people say, why can't it be that way? It's all about ownership, chain of custody, because you can't trust machines. Have you not seen Terminator? It doesn't work. So if you want to, you can put your listing in late, but you can't put it in early. So let's say yesterday was our listing date. That's when our sign went up. And then the expiration date, of course, is when your contract expires. Let's say my expiration date is July 31st. As long as it hasn't expired, you can continue to extend it. But once that listing's expired, you can't bring it back. You can't resurrect an expired listing. So if my seller decided on August 2nd they wanted to still be listed with me, they would relist with me and I would need new documentation for that. In fact, I just talked to someone today on the phone who is going to do a big price reduction on their listing, and they wanted to know if they could cancel it and then relist it that same day with the new price. They totally can, but they're going in as back on market, not new, and the cumulative days on market will still be attached because they didn't wait over 31 days. And so, and of course, they'd have to have new documentation because they're canceling their current listing agreement, getting a new seller up and listing agreement with the seller. Yep. Occupied by, owner, tenant, vacant, whatever applies. And then we've got showing instructions. So showings for properties have to be readily available, equal to everyone. There isn't an exact time period, but it's got to be equal to everybody. As the listing agent, you don't have an advantage over anybody else when it comes to bringing a buyer to the home. So you're on the same boat everybody else is. And you would come here and choose whatever way your showing is going to happen. If you're doing appointment only, then you, the listing agent, are included in when those appointments are being scheduled. If you're not going to schedule appointments until Monday, you can't show it before Monday because you're not doing that for anybody else. Broker Bay is the MLS scheduling tool. So if you're using Broker Bay, there's a tool here that says use Broker Bay, yes. If you're not using Broker Bay, like maybe I'm doing call for instructions, then I would want to come here and go to that use Broker Bay and turn that to no. Because if Broker Bay is turned on, then this Broker Bay book appointment is on the listing and people would use that to schedule showings. So if you don't want to use Broker Bay, you want to make sure you have that turned off. Then there are 3 branded and 3 unbranded virtual tour fields. Branded would be a virtual tour that has agent and brokerage information on it, where unbranded means it won't. People ask all the time, can I use a YouTube video? You totally can, and that's a branded virtual tour. Because unless you own YouTube, you can't guarantee me there will not be branding when someone watches that. So unbranded means there's no branding. Unbranded tours go to all the syndicated websites and on all the client views, where the branded virtual tours are on the listing agent and listing broker website and on the agent views. So if you want consumers to see it, it's got to be unbranded, and you can't have any marketing in that unbranded tour. So that is the required information when you're entering a listing. Questions about any of that stuff, other than the data entry, is not very fun. That's the biggest reason why using the data form to enter your listing is a lot better than doing it yourself. All right, so we got the information entered in there. So now let's talk about saving as an unpublished and saving as a published listing. And in Paragon Classic, they call that partial and active or live. In Paragon Connect, it's published and unpublished, not to be confused with an unpublished sold, which is something that wasn't on the MLS. So to save it, I come up here to save, and I've got 2 options, save unpublished and publish. If I hit save unpublished or make it a partial listing, it doesn't check for any of the required fields, it just saves what I entered. I could have entered everything wrong, and it will still take it. And if I hit save unpublished, it tells me it saves it, but now it's been saved as that unpublished listing, and it's still only visible to me in the broker. I mean, the unpublished and the temp number didn't change at all. Over here on the left, it shows the total number of fields and what's required and how many of the total I've got in there. If I wanted to make it live, I would go to publish, and this is where it's going to make sure I've got the required fields and that the information is entered correctly. So when you go to save it as a published listing, up at the top, you're going to see errors and warnings. First thing is validate location. Must manually place pin on exact location. So if you ever see a listing and it's in the wrong place, the agent put it there on purpose, because this comes up on every listing. So unless somebody had a mental deficiency or whatever, which hopefully they didn't, they did it on purpose. So when I hit verify, it's going to come up and show me the map, and that is exactly where 2872 South Pine Flats is. If it was in the wrong place, I can just move the marker. If it's in really the wrong place, like let's say, for example, there's a new subdivision going in here, and this is actually where it is, but it's so new the roads aren't here, I can put it where it needs to be, and then it says manually placed, so then I just click confirm, and then it uses where I put it. So then, if I click on this number 6, it's going to take me through all the things that are required. So status is required, so I got to put status in there, and if I click here on save and publish again, then it's going to show me all the other things that I'm missing. Now, this one warning is for asking price, because I put $1,000. It's asking me, is that the list price is outside of normal range? Is this correct? If I mark as accept, and then I go here and I hit publish again, it's not going to flag me with that anymore. But I've got these 6 issues that I need to go through and correct. So here's something that we talked about earlier. If if land size is standard lot, number of acres validates against that. And so here it's making it look like, it says please validate number of acres according to the land size keyword. It's making it look like number of acres is wrong. But number of acres came from the tax records. So number of acres is not validating against land size. Now I am not a mathematician, but guess what? Google is. So 0.240 acres in square feet is 10,454. Well, standard lot only goes up to 9,999. So this would need to be 10,000 to 0.49. If you're curious, standard lot ends at 0.22. 0.23 is just over 10,000. And I only know that because I've run that equation in Google a bunch. And that's one hang up that people get a lot. They see a house, oh, this is a standard lot. Well, yes, but standard lot in the MLS only goes up to 9,999 square feet. So if it's larger than that, it's not standard lot. The next one that is flagging for me here is age. If age equals 11 to 20 years, year built must be between current year minus 11 and current year minus 20. If 2001 is the year built, which is what came from the tax records, it wasn't 11 to 20 years ago. It doesn't matter how great 2001 was, it's 2026. That is longer than 11 to 20 years ago. So I would need to come here and choose 21 to 30. And then once all of those errors are corrected, which I have bedroom levels I'm missing, then I would come here and hit publish, and if everything's correct, then it's a live listing and everyone can see it. There isn't a waiting period, there isn't a clearinghouse, nobody has to click yes. Once all those errors are corrected, it's a live listing and visible to everyone. Questions about saving or partially saving or publishing or unpublishing a listing? All right, so let's look at maintaining a listing. Now, real quick before I forget, I do want to show you what that looks like in Paragon Classic, just in case you're in Paragon Classic. What I would say is the more interaction you have with Paragon Connect, the easier it will be when that time comes.
I like working on Paragon Connect.
Yeah, there's no reason to not use Paragon Connect.
Yeah.
I mean, the only reason even to bring this up is just because there's plenty of people that are still using this.
Right.
So here is my partial listing on Pine Flats. I click on the partial listing number, and to save it in Paragon Classic, there's save as partial listing and save listing. And then the saved listing goes through and checks for all the required fields before I can make it live. All right, so let's talk about maintaining listings. So on your handout, in the section with the screenshots, maintaining listings is on page 4. So I'm going to bring up a listing here for us to work with. And let's use one from my search here. And I'm going to want to find one that's been on the market for a little while because we'll do the price analysis and talk about that. All right, so you're in Paragon Connect and you want to go work with your listings. Now, before we jump into listing maintenance, one thing to point out in Paragon Connect that can be really useful if you have a listing is there's a widget that you can add to your dashboard that is for your listed properties. And so if I go here to the customized dashboard, there's a widget called the sell side tracker. So I'm going to add that widget here. And so there's the sell side tracker, and then I can come here to assign a listing. And what was the listing we were looking at? On Lucina. There's the listing. And so when you have a listing on the sell side tracker, it gives you all this information about the property and shows you the status, days on market, favorite, possible, rejected, which are all from the Collab Center, meaning that an agent has a buyer they've set up for a search, 8 have marked as favorite, 5 possible, 36 rejected, and then agent buyer views, all this information right here that you can get from that widget. And if I go here to the listing section, you've got similar widgets here that you can add. There's the sell side tracker again. We'll add that same property here, and so I can get that same information here. And on the sell side tracker, in addition to just showing me those statistics, I can go here to Insights, and that's going to show me information about the property, days on market, open houses, listing views, agent and consumer views, favorite, possible, rejected, how many searches match the property, agent and buyer comments. And then if I go down here to competition, that's going to show me nearby listings to that property. And if you assign your seller to the listing, they also can see that on the sell side of the Collab Center. So there's the subject property. There's all these listings around it. And I can come down here and like, here's a property that's pending. Here's one on the same street that's active. Here's another pending one. There's an active one. And, well, let's just go here to, there's a sold listing right there across McMillan. And so I could come here and see what that sold for and compare it to my listing and see maybe we're not priced competitively. And so that's the insights that you can get from that listing, and you could assign the contact right here. And so that's that sell side tracker and the insights that are there. So on your handout, there's a screenshot here about maintaining a listing. It's this exact same screen I've got here. And so a couple of things is, a quick way to get to a listing is you can just click right here, and that brings up the listing. If I click on that property on Lucina, that takes me right in to maintain it, just like when we were looking at entering the listing. So I could come here and change anything I need. And so up here at the top, I can go here to edit photos. This lets me upload photos, rearrange the photos. I could go here to upload a document. So if I've got a property disclosure, or I've got the MLS status disclosure form, I just come here to upload, choose the file, and then I'm going to upload. And then if you're going to make it public, it can't be branded. So a property disclosure is branded by default because it's got your name and brokerage at the bottom, so you can't make that public. And then if I wanted to add floor plans, I can come here to floor plans and upload a floor plan if I have a PDF floor plan or something there. And then we've got validate location. So earlier we talked about when you go to save it, it makes you validate the location. Here you could come and change it if you needed to. Like maybe the roads weren't on the map, but now they are. I could come here, pops up the exact same screen, and I can validate the location. Then we get to price analysis. So price analysis is going to come up and show you how many current buyers with searches that other agents have entered match this property. So this property has been on the market for 138 days. 359 people currently match it, but nothing's happening. So I'm not an expert, but you can kind of figure out what's going on. It's not priced right for the market, more than likely. So let's just drop the price to $450. Then when I hit, and that's not changing the price, that's just letting me see what the price would be. And if I hit recalculate buyers, instead of having 359 at 489, at 450 we have 534. And just for fun, let's drop it down to 400. So what that number means is those contacts have searches set up with agents, and this property matches it at that price point. Dropping it to 400,000, almost 1,000 people match this property. So if you have a seller who is trying to be aggressive with pricing to sell the property, this is a way to show them how many more people will be reached at that price point.
How did you get there again?
So just right up here on the right, it's called price analysis.
Oh, yes.
And it only works on active listings because buyers aren't looking for solds. Buyers aren't looking for partial listings. It's not going to work with that. But on an active listing, price analysis lets you see how many contacts with searches currently match that property.
So you can't do that before you...
Right, it's got to be live. Because nobody's searching for your property unless it's live.
And this is on
It's in Paragon Classic too.
Paragon.
If you're in Paragon Classic, it's up in the blue toolbar. It says price analysis. And we've had price analysis for a long time. This is it's just over here in Paragon Connect.
So Instant Act is on the upper right, price analysis.
Right, so let's say you're on your phone at your seller's house. You can bring up their listing on your phone, go to price analysis, put in a different price point, and see the number jump. So like again, this property right now had 359 people that are already knowing about it. But clearly 359 people haven't done anything in 138 days. So that's not it. Again, my non-expert mind says this isn't priced correctly for the market because it's been 138 days. And so if it was things priced correctly sell. I mean, if I'm selling a car, I'm selling a bottle of ketchup, I'm selling a house, if I want to sell those things, they have to be priced to what the market will accept. And so price analysis, now, that isn't Zillow, that isn't Realtor.com, that isn't random people. These are 359 people that have said, hey, agent, I'm far enough along in the process, I want you to send me listings. Now, are all those people active buyers right now? Of course they're not. But there's a good percentage of them that are going to be. Most people don't call an agent up and say, hey, will you send me listings for the next 20 years? I don't ever want to buy a house. Most agents aren't going to deal with people that do that. And most people aren't going to do that. And so it's going to be people that are in that process working with an agent that want to be notified. So that's price analysis. Open house lets you enter open house information. So let's say I'm going to have an open house on Saturday, the 20th, and it's going to start at 2 o'clock, and it is going to run until 4:30 because, man, I love open houses. So then I hit save, and that saves the open house. Open houses get syndicated everywhere where the listing's going. When the listing goes pending, the open houses are removed. And they're not retained on the listing. They're just gone. So they don't keep those. And then tour would be for a tour. The only place I know they use tours is in Moscow with the Lata Association and in Twin Falls with the Western Magic Valley Realtors. They use them for their association caravans. But the thing with tour is it's not seen by the consumers. It's only seen by agents. Assign to contact, that would let you assign it to your seller. So they could get the sell side of the Collab Center.
Assign it to what?
To the seller. Because you can set up your seller for the Collab Center, and then all those things we saw earlier with like the competition and views and favorite, possible, rejected, your seller can see that. So that way the seller is being notified of all that instead of you having to provide it to them manually. They're seeing that all the time. Again, I can't think of a better way to motivate the seller than to see all the homes around them sell, and their house is not selling because it's priced higher than those others. So that lets you assign it. Share lets you come here and create a link that's for consumers or a link for agents. The link for agents will have them log into Paragon Connect. The link for consumers is a client-friendly link that is just a link. Third-party add-ons. The only third-party add-on we have is Supra. So you assign the lockbox. So if I go here to Supra assign lockbox, I enter the Supra information to assign the lockbox. Or I can get a report or unassign the lockbox. That's all there for Supra. All right, so back here to maintaining our listing. Now, before we go look at the other maintenance options, since we're already in here, I want to talk about how to enter the sold data. And so on your handout, if you go back to where all the definitions are, the very last page of the definitions, which I will tell you the page number here, it is page 22, the very bottom of 22, has the closing information. So to enter closing information, you first have to come here and change the status to sold. When you change the status to pending, it already has you put in the contract date and the proposed closing date. So if I change this to pending, then I can come down here to the sold section and enter my dates. Only when it's pending can I do that. And then when I come here and I change it to sold, then I can scroll down here to the bottom and all the sold fields are available. But those are only available when the status is set to sold. So like if you're entering an unpublished sold, you've got to have unpublished sold as the status first before these fields are available. So how did it sell? Was it VA, FHA, conventional, whatever it was? And then your dates are already going to be here because you put that in when it went pending. But if maybe it closed a day early, you'd come in here and put in the correct dates. Then we have real property contributions and closing cost contributions. Real property contributions are additional objects contributed by the seller, typically in new construction that are affixed to the property, such as fence, landscaping, or sprinklers. They're things that can't be taken. So it's not a light fixture or an appliance. An example of when you might have real property contributions, maybe this was the last property in the development to be sold, and to entice a purchase, instead of just having the landscaping and sprinklers in the front yard, they landscape the whole thing. So maybe I would come here and put in full sprinklers. There we go. So that I could put that in there. And if they didn't happen, of course, you could put NA or zero. Closing cost contributions is a dollar amount paid by the seller on behalf of the buyer. If they didn't do that, then you've got 0. Sold price is a required field. You cannot omit the sold price. You have to have it. So then I come here, put in my sold price. There's other fields here like seller paid finance related costs, seller paid closing costs, seller paid home repairs. Those are not required. But of course, putting them in there can be very useful for comparables, for appraisers, that kind of stuff. Then we have the selling agent, the agent that represented the buyer. So you would come here and enter their name. If there's someone who's not a member of Intermountain MLS, there's an option here for non-member agent, non-member office. You would just select that from the choices. And then if there's a second selling agent, you put that in there and save it. Once you save this as sold and all the fields are in there, you're not able to come back and edit it. So let's say you save it and then you realize, oh man, I put the wrong agent in for the selling agent. You can't change it. We can change it on our end at the MLS. And so if it's less than 30 days, we will change it for you without the maintenance fee, which is $15. You just have to send us the documentation like a closing statement or an executed purchase and sale agreement that shows who the correct agent is. And then we'll update that. And if it's, like I said, within 30 days, we don't charge you for that. If it's after 30 days, then it's a $15 maintenance fee. It's not a fine. It just costs $15 for us to maintain a listing. That's the price anybody has to pay. The reason there's that 30-day window is we don't let you fix it. So if you made an error and you realized it, we don't let you fix it. So we'll fix it for you. The idea is if it took you longer than 30 days to figure it out, somebody probably told you. If it's less than 30 days, you figured it out. And so if it's been longer than 30 days, again, the documentation is still required. We'll update it, and then you'll see a $15 maintenance fee on your bill for the MLS number. So just keep that in mind. Now, other questions with the sold information. All right, so we're going to exit this listing, and I'm not going to save things. All right, so we're back here on our listing maintenance screen, and this same, like I said, same screenshot is on your handout on page 4. Now, I'm going to click up here at the top on Published, and that shows all the live listings, the published listings. Now, of course, clicking on Edit will edit the listing. We already talked about what Insights is. That brings up that report that shows the views and mails and searches and all that stuff. But if you click on the menu here, the More menu, that brings up these actions, these shortcuts. So validate location, update the expiration date, enter an open house or a tour. Those are all right here. Here's also copy listing. So maybe I've got a listing that's going to expire, but we want to relist it. So copy listing lets me make a copy of it. Copy listing only works at the brokerage you're currently with. So for example, if I have a listing at this current brokerage and I change offices, copy listing won't work with my old listings anymore. But I can still go into the Forms program, import the information from my old listing, send that to Paragon to create a partial or unpublished listing. So there's a way to pull in the data, you just aren't copying it in the MLS. Photos, documents, and floor plans are all here like we saw before. So then we have these contact tools. Reverse prospecting. What reverse prospecting lets you do when you click on it is it's going to show you agents that have contacts with searches that match this property. And if they're on the Collab Center, it's going to show as, favorite, there's a possible, there's a undecided, and let's see if we can find a rejected. Maybe we may not find one. But you're seeing that activity on the Collab Center. And from here, you can click on the envelope and you can email all these agents. 366 contacts match this property with a search. I could also click on an individual agent and email them. And if I was on my phone doing this, under the More menu, there would be an option to text them. So I could text them. Maybe we just had a price reduction. Their client marked the property as a possible on the 16th, and we're having an open house Saturday. I would probably want to reach out to Madeline's contact 919150 and say, hey, Madeline, your person matched my property yesterday. We're having an open house Saturday. Bring them by, free donuts, or whatever you want to do to market to that agent. That's what reverse prospecting is. And again, you get there, in Paragon Connect, by clicking on that menu on the right, there's reverse prospecting. Match My Contacts will see if any of the contacts you have a search that matches this property. I mean, I would think probably you would know that already because you're working with the seller and you've got a buyer that already was wanting that, but it lets you match it to your contacts. Assign to contact, we saw earlier, this lets you assign it to the seller. So that way the seller can be notified of what's going on. And then View Detail brings up the listing detail. Listing Insights, just like Insights right there. Share lets me bring up the links. And the third-party add-ons is the super information. And so you can do a lot of those things without having to maintain the whole listing. Just click on that menu on the right to bring up those shortcuts. And the thing to remember is all of this works on your phone. So on your phone, you want to set up an open house, you don't have to wait till you're back at your computer to do it. Other questions with maintaining or entering any of the listing data? So that's all I've got for you guys this afternoon. If you haven't already, fill out the input security application, get it filled out, signed by your broker, return it back to us at the MLS, and then we will get your input access turned on.